Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Magic the Conversation. I know I had originally scheduled this stream this week on our normal day on Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, but it is one of my brother's birthdays tomorrow. Happy early birthday, Jameson. So we will be celebrating that during my usual stream time, so I am streaming this a day early. But the expansion we are reviewing today is the 18th set called Mercadian Masques. It came out in October of 1999. The expansion set symbol is a royal mask. It is used to represent hidden things are being hidden. There's schemes going on, and people who are not as they appear to be on the outside. This will be reflected upon multiple characters as far as the storyline goes. Mercadian Mask also continues. It brings Magic back to the present because a couple sets ago we were in the Tempest block where Gerard and the crew with the Weatherlight was fighting Volrath. Volrath had kidnapped Captain Sisay, and Gerard, the main character of this story arc, had to infiltrate Volrath's stronghold, rescuing Sisay, as well as a couple other friends of his. They successfully escaped, and then where we saw them was in Exodus. They went through the portal. Urtai the wizard was left behind because he wasn't able to escape with them, so he was captured by the Phyrexians. Krovax had turned into a vampire due to a curse that he acquired from killing his guardian angel Selena, who Volrath had used against him. And Gerard's best friend, Miri, the cat warrior, was slain by Krovax in the last battle before they all escaped. And then after Exodus, we had gone into the Urza saga, the Urza block, starting with Urza saga, and it went into the Magic's past, how Urza created the bloodlines. He created the bloodline for Gerard. He created the blueprints and manufactured the skyship Weatherlight. He built Karn, the Silver Golem, gave him life, because Karn is a member of the Weatherlight and one of Gerard's guardians. So it had followed Urza's experiments, his inventions, so to speak, his Tolarian Academy. And it also deep dived into how the Phyrexians were preparing their invasion of Dominaria. But Mercadian Masques continues where we left off in Exodus. Gerard and the crew of the Weatherlight had successfully escaped out of Wrath, and they ended up in Mercadia, which is where the Mercadian Mask set takes off. And without further ado, we will continue. I will explain how the story goes on as we reveal the cards. The crew of the Weatherlight ends up crash landing on a farm, and the ship is no longer responsive. And Gerard and the Weatherlight crew, they go over their losses. Suddenly the ship is carried away by a wave, and some rebels, as we'll see in this set. The ship is captured along with Orem, the ship's healer. Some soldiers arrive. They confront Gerard and the crew, and they want to take the Weatherlight. So Gerard and his crew are taken into custody. They're brought into the city of Mercadia, which is on an upside-down mountain. It sounds weird, but we'll see it in the artwork. And there, Gerard and his crew meet with the magistrate. And the magistrate is the leader of Mercadia. And Gerard notices how poorly trained the military is in Mercadia. So he offers to make a deal he offers to train the soldiers of Mercadia and go fight off the rebels since they are a common enemy. That way Gerard could get his ship back and he could continue his journey home to Dominaria. Squee is a goblin, and goblins are considered royalty in Mercadia. So he gets the group out of a lot of trouble, or they get special treatment. Then Gerard and his group of soldiers and mercenaries, as they're called, end up attacking the rebels. And it does not go well because where Gerard wants them to just subdue the rebels, the Mercadian soldiers and mercenaries disobey Gerard's command and they slay the rebels. Orem, the ship's healer, ends up falling in love with the leader of the rebels. His name is Chaumano. And she blames Gerard, like, how could you make such a deal? How could you lead this group? So on and so forth. But Gerard ends up killing some of the mercenaries in order to save the rest of the rebels. Therefore, he is himself arrested, and the rest of the crew is detained once again and thrown in prison. Takara and Stark. Takara had been kidnapped along with Captain Sisay, and Stark is Takara's daughter. Stark was blinded last time in Exodus. So it ends up Takara talks Gerard into doing all these schemes, and this is where the Mercadian Masques symbol comes in. Takara ends up being Volrath in disguise. Volrath has the ability to shapeshift. He slits Stark's throat because Stark was the whole reason that Volrath exists in the first place. Stark had betrayed and played both sides multiple times throughout, beginning in the Tempest set. Or the Weatherlight set, because that came before Tempest. Anyways, Volrath reveals himself. The crew ends up escaping. They find out that in the hangar where they find the Weatherlight, the city of Mercadia is also housing Phyrexian ships. So Phyrexia has already been in cahoots with Mercadia, and the crew realizes this. Volrath tries to stop Gerard and his crew once again, but they end up stopping his ship, and they escape and planeswalk away back to Dominaria. Volrath escapes through his own portal, and the story will continue in Nemesis. But I will go in bigger detail of the story as we go through the cards. Now, without further ado, we can begin with the cards themselves. First card is Aerial Caravan, 4/3 soldier, human soldier. Costs 6 mana, so that's a bit costly. It does have flying. They are riding a albatross. For 3 mana, you can remove the top card of your library from the game. Until the end of your turn, you may play that card as though it were in your hand. The card has to be revealed face up when you remove it from the game. Successful delivery is not guaranteed. This card costs a lot of mana, so I would imagine if you would utilize it, you would definitely need some form of mana ramping artifacts or maybe blue-green for this to be useful. I do own the card, but I don't think I've ever used it, and I've never seen it used. Next up is Afterlife. Destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. Its controller gets a 1/1 spirit token with flying. Decent removal spell. I think it's actually a reprinted card from either Visions or Mirage. The artwork shows a Deepwood Ghoul. He'd slain this rebel, and here's the rebel spirit coming out. I don't know if he's saying boo to him or what, but that's what the artwork resembles. Alabaster Wall. 3 mana, 0/4 wall. Tap it to prevent the next 1 damage dealt to any target. Its mortar is mixed with water straight from the Fountain of Cho. The rebels, they're able to move the water. That's how they're able to commandeer the Weatherlight in the first place. The rebels also believe in the coming of Ramos. Ramos is a giant dragon engine, and he actually has pieces of him, and they use the power matrix. The crew and of the Weatherlight needs to find the power matrix in order to get the energy for the Weatherlight to fly again. Alley Grifters, 3 mana, 2/2 mercenaries. When they become blocked, the defending player must choose and discard a card from their hand. One distracts the victim, the other extracts the valuables. Here this guy is distracting him, and here's this guy taking his coin purse. Most of the time, the opponent's probably not going to want to block these guys, but they're decent mercenaries. Mercenaries and rebels are a heavy theme in this set, and we will see more of them as they come. Ancestral Mask, 3 mana enchantment on a creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 for each other enchantment in play. The masks, like the ancient trees they're grown from, lend strength to the dryads. This is a really powerful card because it gives any creature like the Yavimaya Enchantress ability from Urza's Destiny. They get +2/+2 for each other enchantment in play. It does not count itself, but in a enchantment deck, it will make any creature a threat. Next up is Armistice, 3 mana enchantment. Pay 5, you draw a card, and target opponent gains 3 life. We all must profit for peace to last. Mercadian saying. Here we show a Chorum rebel making a deal with one of the merchants from Mercadia. He's not happy about it. They look like they hate each other, but in order for both of them to profit, they made this temporary alliance. I've never seen this card used. I do think it's a good card because your opponent gaining 3 life in order for you to draw a card is, I think the card that you draw will help you out more than the opponent's 3 life gain would be a threat to you. If the opponent has nothing on the battlefield and they just gain life, that doesn't really affect you at all. You getting an extra card means that you have more answers to whatever might happen. Drawing cards is a really powerful thing to do in the game, especially once you get to the late game. Arms Dealer, 3 mana, 1/1 goblin. Pay 2 mana, sacrifice any goblin to deal 4 damage to target creature. He has the weapons, he has the connections, and he knows the Hanger's dark secret. Hanger's dark secret, as I said before, has the Phyrexian ships. And that's what this card is referring to. The goblins of Mercadia, they're called the Chirons. They are human size because most of the time goblins are like half the size of humans. But the Chiron goblins are human sized. They're smarter, more intelligent, and they are also considered royalty in Mercadia. A really good goblin to have. Arrest, 3 mana, aura. Auras are what would be enchantments that go on creatures. Enchanted creature cannot attack, block, and its activated abilities cannot be used. Orm had no memory of the previous night. The first thing she could remember was waking up with the dead guard's blood on her hands. In order to find the power matrix, Orm and the crew of the Weatherlight end up going to Sapreza, which is an oceanside city that are run by merfolk. The merfolk in Mercadia are able to walk on land. They can switch between a fishtail like a typical mermaid, or they can walk on land with human-like legs. Anyway, one of the Mercadian wizards ends up kind of charming Orm and framing her for the murder of the said guard, and this is where Orm is on trial. She ends up escaping, though. Assembly Hall, 5 mana. Pay 4, tap it, reveal a creature card in your hand, search your library for a copy of that card, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. I've never seen this card used. I think it costs way too much mana and doesn't really help you at all, other than putting creatures in your hand that you already have. Like I said, I've never seen it used. Mercadian Masques also has a reputation for not being a powerful set, mainly because the Urza block had such powerful cards and had a lot of cards banned that the research and development at Wizards of the Coast were scared to pull the trigger on a lot of cards, so they depowered a lot. So in the public, we're so used to such powerful cards prior, so Mercadian Masques kind of was a letdown as far as that went. But not every set could be a gem. That's what makes a variety is better than none. Ballista Squad, 4 mana, 2/2 Rebel, pay X and a white, tap it, deal X damage to target attacking or blocking creature. The perfect antidote for a tightly packed formation. Good Rebel to have. Good, remember, you don't even have... Oh, never mind. You do have to tap them. Never mind. Balloon Peddler. 3 mana, 2/2 Spell Shaper. Spell Shapers are a very repetitive theme in this set. They all have where you pay a certain amount of mana, tap them, and then you discard a card from your hand, and then they do an ability. This one gives target creature flying until end of turn for 1 blue. The Market Festival turned out to be the high point of Jaffe's visit. Here, I guess this kid's holding on to grabbed a balloon, and he's floating up in the air while his royal mom is paying the peddler. Doesn't know what's going on. Peddler's got a funny look on her face, too. Barbed Wire, 3 mana artifact. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Barbed Wire does 1 damage to that player. The owner may pay 2 colorless to prevent the next 1 damage that Barbed Wire would be dealt. A steel snake with 10,000 teeth. I used this card in my cleric deck when I had a bunch of clerics or Urza's Armor, where I wouldn't even have to use the 2 colorless mana ability to prevent my own damage to Barbed Wire. But this is really good for control decks as a win condition. Bargaining Table, for 5 mana, pay X, draw a card. X is the number of cards in an opponent's hand. Although it looks like a game, business around the table is deadly serious. I've never seen this card before, and I've never seen it used. If your opponent has a full hand, then a 7 mana to draw a card is very expensive to use. 5 mana to cast the Bargaining Table is a big cost as it is. So since it's so situational, I don't think it's very good. If your opponent doesn't have any cards in hand, then you just tap to draw a card. That's when it becomes best case scenario. Battle Rampart. It's a wall, 1/3. You can tap it. Target creature gains haste until end of turn. Battle Squadron. 5 mana, flying. Battle Squadron's power toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control. It counts itself, so if it's the only thing on the battlefield, it's just a 1/1 flying. The goblins made an unruly pile with military precision. And this is one of the Phyrexian sky ships that all these goblins are on. And you can see like the Phyrexian architecture that's underneath the city of Mercadia. It's part of the battle hangar. This goblin fell off. I just noticed that. Not really sure how to say this word. Bifurcate? I don't even know what it means, but it looks like one creature is growing out of another. Anyway, it's a 4 mana rare sorcery for green. Search your library for a copy of target creature card in play and put that card into play. Then shuffle your library. So we already have another card that cares about a copy of a creature. Assembly Hall cared about a copy in the hand. This one cares about a creature in play. I guess this is good if you're running creatures that enter the battlefield effects, and if you want that enter the battlefield effect to trigger again, that's the only reason I can think you can use this for. It's not an instant, so you can't use it if one of your creatures dies and replace it. It's only a sorcery, sadly. Black Market, 5-minute enchantment. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, put a charge counter on Black Market. At the beginning of your first main phase, add 1 black mana to your mana pool for each charge counter on the Black Market. It costs 5 mana, so I think it's too little too late. Might be good in Eldrazi decks, where Eldrazi costs like 11 to 15 mana, so Black Market might be able to get you to that mana, but there are way easier ways to get to that mana. Blaster Mage, he's a 2/2 for 3. He has the Spell Shaper ability to destroy target wall. Don't get up, I'll show myself out. Blockade Runner, 4 mana, 2/2 Merfolk. Pay a blue. Blockade Runner is unblockable this turn. I need to get back to Mercadia City, said Sisse. We can get you there, the Vizier answered. Easily. And it shows Captain Sisse riding this Merfolk, and you can see how easily he can go over a blockade. Bloodhound, 3 mana, 1/1. This is a female goblin, by the way. 3 mana, 1/1 Hound. Whenever you're dealt damage, you may put that many +1/+1 counters on Bloodhound. At the end of your turn, remove all +1/+1 counters from Bloodhound. So if your opponent does like 20 damage to you and you survive, Bloodhound gets 20 +1/+1 counters, and then it's a 21/21. Then you should probably attack with Bloodhound, or maybe you can sacrifice it with like Bloodshot Cyclops or something. Because at the end of your turn, all the counters that Bloodhound got are taken off. Blood Oath. 4 mana instant. Choose a card type. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. Blood Oath does 3 damage to that player for each card of the chosen type revealed. Back then, the chosen card types are artifacts, creatures, enchantments, instants, lands, and sorceries. Planeswalkers would come later on. The card was situationally powerful. If you had a way to look at your opponent's hand, or you knew the deck your opponent was playing, you could do a lot of damage to your opponent. If you had mana ramp and you're able to cast Blood Oath on like turn 3, you had the potential to do a lot more damage. I've never seen it kill a player though, and I don't think a lot of players even used it when I was playing. Boa Constrictor, 5 mana, 3/3 snake. Tap it to give itself +3/+3 until end of turn. Its eyes are bigger than its stomach, but its mouth is larger still. I guess its tapping ability is only relevant if it's blocking, because whatever creature it blocks, it could tap it and then it doubles itself, which will become a 6/6. So if you attack with the Boa Constrictor, unless you give it vigilance, you can't use the tapping ability on it. It costs 5 mana, so I think that's slow. Definitely one of the suckier snakes in the game. Bog Smugglers, 3 mana, 2/2 with Swamp Walk. They're like Bog Raiders, except of being zombies. They are mercenaries. They slide over the bog like oil across glass. Bog Witch. This was the Dark Ritual Spell Shaper. You pay a black, discard a card, add 3 black mana to your mana pool. The world is the body, the mana is the blood, the witch is the surgeon. Pretty decent Spell Shaper. Probably one of the best black had to offer. Brainstorm gets reprinted. Draw 3 cards, put 2 from your hand, and put it on top of your library in any order. I see more than others do because I know where to look. The Surprising Vizier. Brawl. I've never seen this card. It's an instant for 5 mana. Until end of turn, all creatures gain tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature. Anything can happen when patience is scarce and wine is abundant. So Gerard, Tarngarth, and Karn are all locked up in prison. Takara keeps bringing Gerard wine, and the wine is with some poison, which causes Gerard to act and react negatively to all situations. Tarngarth, I guess, realizes that Takara has been poisoning Gerard, and after they get into this fight, they come to their senses, and then eventually this is when Takara reveals her true self, which Takara actually being Volrath. Briar Patch, 3-mana enchantment. Whenever a creature attacks you, it gets power -1 until end of turn. A really unique green defensive card. As easily as the Dryads could close a fist, so could the branches in the underbrush entangle. Bribery. This is probably one of the most powerful cards from Mercadian Masques that still sees play today, mainly via Commander. Search target opponent's library for any creature card and put that card into play under your control. That player then shuffles his or her library. In Mercadia City, loyalties extend only as far as your purse can stretch. Here we have a giant, and I don't know if this giant was a bodyguard to this citizen here, but this magistrate or noble is offering something, and the giant's like, ooh, and she's like, how could you? But for the card itself, really, really good, really, really powerful. I've been, unfortunately, on the receiving end of bribery, where my best creature gets used against me. And you get to search your whole opponent's library. You get to see what deck they're using. And like I said, you use your best creature against them. Even if it's an Eldrazi, you can steal somebody's Emrakul and put it onto the battlefield, and it's most likely a good game after that point. So, probably the best card in the set from my memory. Buoyancy. 2 mana, you may play Buoyancy anytime you can play an instant, so as flash, enchanted creature gains flying. Sprays and merfolk become lagged on land, but some find it quicker to bring the water with them. Oh, I forgot about this card. Cackling Witch. 2 mana, 1/1 spell shaper. Pay X and a black. Discard a card from your hand. Target creature gets +X power until end of turn. The touch of his madness can drive anyone into a killing frenzy. Definitely looks weird. I forgot about this card too. Caller of the Hunt. 3 mana. When she enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Her power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures in play of the chosen type. What's her... Oh, okay, so she's not a lord anymore. She's a human. Definitely good in any kind of tribal deck that you play. Katerin Brute. 3 mana is he just a mercenary? Oh, he's a horror mercenary. He looks way bigger than something that should be a 2/2 compared to these people. Anyway, he's a 2/2. You pay 2 mana and tap him to search your library for any mercenary card with mana cost 2 or less and put it onto the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. The Katerin guilds prefer to call them public relations. This was a good, this is the theme of the mercenaries as well as the rebels. You would pay a certain amount of mana, tap it, and then you would search for mercenary or rebel card, whatever the corresponding one was. And you put, most of the time the creature would be weaker than what you already have out, but there's strength in numbers regardless. Katerin Enforcer, probably one of the better mercenaries. 5 mana, 4/3. He has fear, which means he can't be blocked except by artifact and black creatures. Excuse me. He's also a mercenary horror. You pay 4 to have him search your library for a mercenary with mana cost 4 or less and put it onto the battlefield. Katerin Kidnappers. 4 mana, 4/2, pay 3, tap, search your library for mercenary with mana cost 3 or less and put it onto the battlefield. Recruits aren't always volunteers. And the Caterans were the mercenaries that were part of the soldiers that Gerard was supposed to lead against in fighting the rebels. Here's the strongest mercenary from the set, the Cateran Overlord. Another horror. 7 mana, 7/5. Sacrifice a creature to regenerate him. Pay 6. Search your library for a mercenary with mana cost 6 or less and put it onto the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. Cateran Persuader. 2 mana, 2/1. Pay 1. Search your library for a mercenary with mana cost 1 or less and put it into play. Shuffle your library afterwards. He's definitely, he's like, come here. Let's beat this guy up. But he's weak. Cateran Slaver, 6 mana, 5/5 Swamp Walk. Search your library for a mercenary card with mana 5 or less and put it onto the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. So the artwork for a lot of these Caterans remind me of Mournfin and Gallowbraid from the Weatherlight set. That's why they were added the horror creature type in addition to their mercenary. The Slaver, I think, is only good against other black decks because of his Swamp Walk ability. I can't justify the 6 mana 5/5. Even if he searches for a mercenary with 5 or less, I just think he's outclassed, especially by the Overlord. Cateran Summons, for 1 black, search your library for a mercenary card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. Even when recruitment is slow, the guild can always cook something up. One neat fact nowadays is if a creature has the Changeling ability, that means they count as every creature type, and then that means you can search for them with the mercenaries and rebels. Caustic Wasps, 3 mana, 1/1 insect with flying. When they deal combat damage to a player, you may destroy an artifact that player controls. Even the wasp knows how to pay the magistrate his due respect. Green does hate artifacts. Cave In, for 5 mana. You may remove a red card in your hand from the game instead of paying its mana cost. Do 2 damage to all creatures and players. 1 fleet was gone, others were poised. Here's the Weatherlight ship escaping. They had set off some bombs to destroy the Phyrexian ships in the hangar at the bottom of Mercadia. Volrath's ship's underneath here, and this is the point where Gerard ends up like stopping power to a ship to cause it to fall, and it falls on Volrath's ship, pretty much stopping Volrath from being able to pursue it. And then the ship flies out as everything explodes behind them. Volrath does escape, though, and goes back to Wrath. But what happens to Volrath, we won't find out until the next set of Nemesis. Cavern Crawler, 3 mana, 0/3 insect with Mountain Walk. It has the Flowstone ability where it gets +1 power but -1 toughness until end of turn for each red that you pay. Cave Sense, or that gives enchanted creature +1/+1 and Mountain Walk. Here, I guess this little rat thing is going to be devoured by this cat. Ceremonial Guard, 3 mana for 3/4. If it attacks or blocks, you have to destroy it at end of combat. These guards are the most disciplined military unit in the city. They couldn't fight their way out of a broom closet, but they've got discipline. Gerard talking to Sisse, and this is why Gerard needed to train them in battle. Chambered Nautilus, 3 mana, 2/2 beast. If it becomes blocked, you may draw a card. What's merely a home for the Nautilus can become exquisite jewelry in the hands of Saprazen artistes. Chameleon Spirit. When it comes into play, choose a color. It's an illusion. Chameleon Spirit's power and toughness are each equal to the number of permanents of the chosen color that your opponents control. This card is situational, but it is... You can use a lot of cards around it. There are cards that make all creatures in play a certain color, which would make Chameleon Spirit really strong. Charisma. Triple blue aura. When enchanted creature deals damage to a creature, You control that creature as long as Charisma remains in play. It was Gerard's nature to lead and the Mercadians to follow. So this is a weird enchantment on a creature to have, because if the enchanted creature deals damage to a creature, most of the time it's going to kill that creature. If that creature somehow survives, it goes to the battlefield on your side. You end up gaining control as long as you control Charisma. Once the creature that a Charisma enchants dies, or once Charisma goes to the graveyard through another effect, then the owners of those stolen creatures go back. But I've never seen Charisma actually used. I could use it in my Horseshoe Crab deck with Hermetic Study. Deal 1 damage to target creature, I gain control of it, and I keep doing it for as much blue mana as I have. Charmed Griffin, 4 mana, 3/3 flying Griffin. When it comes into play, each other player may put an artifact or an enchantment from their hand directly into play. Are you sure you can afford such a luxury? Now, this card's not good at all. 4 mana for a 3/3 flying. White has way better options for that, and without any drawback whatsoever. Having all other players able to put an artifact or enchantment for free is a big risk that you're taking for too little of a reward. If you're playing a team game, or you have a buddy that you want to cheat out one of their artifacts or enchantments, because it does say opponent, it just says each other player, then by all means, if you want to build your deck around that, go for it. But otherwise, Charmed Griffin, terrible card. Charm Peddler. The next time a sorcerer of your choice would deal damage to target creature this turn, prevent that damage. It's the Spell Shaper ability. Cho'Arum Alchemist. 3 mana, tap it, discard a card from your hand. The next time a sorcerer of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, prevent that damage, and you gain that much life. Here, this guard, I guess, tried to spear her, but the spear just disappeared in her palm. And the guard is surprised. Definitely one of the good, powerful spell shapers that White has. Cho'Arum Bruiser, 6 mana, 3/4 rebel. Is he a giant? Oh, he's an ogre. When Cho'Arum Bruiser attacks, you may tap up to 2 target creatures. He doesn't know why the Cho'Arum fight the Mercadians, but he's happy to bash heads for them anyway. Attacking wise, it's okay. I don't like that it costs 6 mana and he's only a 3/4. I think he should at least be a 4/4 for 6 mana. But he does tap up to 2 target creatures, meaning the opponent cannot block with at least 2 of their creatures that they have. But not good overall. Cho'Arum Legate, 3 mana, 1/2 with protection from black. If the opponent controls a swamp and you control a plains, you may cast the Legate without paying its mana cost. Each color gets 1 of these from the cycle. Chalmano the Revolutionary. He is the leader of the rebels. He is a rebel himself, and all damage dealt to him is prevented. This includes combat damage. This includes sorcery and instant damage from like red, like Lightning Bolt can't harm him. Mercadian Masques can no longer hide the truth. Our day has come at last. And he is indeed the leader of the rebels and Orum's romantic interest. One of the best combos I've done with him, and many of my friends did this with him, is they would put Pariah on him. Pariah was from Urza's Saga that said all damage dealt to you is redirected to enchanted creature. So the damage would be redirected to Chalmano. Since all damage dealt to him is prevented, you are immortal for as long as Chalmano and Pariah remain on the battlefield. Chalmano's Blessing, an equally powerful aura. You could play it as an instant. When it comes into play, choose a color. Enchanted creature has protection from the chosen color. And this effect does not remove Chalmano's Blessing. So if it gets protection from white, the enchantment stays on. Cinder Elemental. 4 mana, 2/2. Pay X and red. Tap it. deal X damage to any target. Their rage can grow to such proportions that they explode in a cloud of fire. The more mana you have, the more deadly this can be, but the opponent could see it coming. And you, like I said, you need to have access to a lot of mana to really make Cinder Elemental worth it playing. Clear the land. 3 mana sorcery. Each player reveals the top 5 cards of his or her library. Puts into play tapped all lands revealed in this way, and then removes the rest from the game. The fact that it helps all players, terrible card. I don't know why it's a rare. Hate it, hate it, hate it. Close Quarters. 4 mana. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, Close Quarters deals 1 damage to target creature or player. The Mercadian's ineptitude in close combat sometimes accidentally pays off. Here we have one of the Mercadian soldiers. When they're fighting the rebels, he stabbed one, but without knowing, he knocked the other out with the hilt of his spear. Definitely good in decks with creature strategies like goblins. Every time your creatures are blocked, you get to either deal 1 to the player, or if the creatures that are blocking need 1 more damage dealt to them to kill them, they can be killed in this way. Cloud Sprite, a fairy for 1 blue, and it can only block creatures with flying, but she has flying herself. The delicate sprites carry messages for Surprisins, but they refuse to land in Mercadia City's filthy markets. Coastal Piracy, another enchantment for 4. When a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. This is really good. It makes all your creatures Ophidians, so to speak. I don't like to think of myself as a pirate. I'm more like a stimulator of the local economy. Here, because goblins were considered royalty, and this guy's really pretty fat. I guess they took whatever riches that they needed from him, and now they're throwing him overboard. Collective Unconscious for 6 mana. That's a lot. Draw a card for each creature you control. Gerard knew little of Ramos, the sky god they worship, but he felt the power of the chant. This is good in an elf deck where you have a lot of mana making elves, and then elves most of the time are going to have a large amount of creatures on the battlefield, and for each creature you do have out, you get to draw a card for. That's the only way I can see this being worth using. Common Cause. Non-artifact creatures get +2/+2 as long as they all share a color. Mercadia City's troops are at their best when they have no enemy to fight. This card is so terribly situational, because it also matters on what your opponent's creatures are. If you're playing white, most likely you are, if you are using Common Cause, and your opponent's playing black and they have 1 creature out, all of them won't share a color, so none of them will get the bonus. If your opponent doesn't have any creatures out and you have nothing but white creatures out, then all your creatures get +2/+2. I guess I could see why, because 3 mana, all your creatures getting +2/+2, like, by itself would be broken. So I can see why. And non-artifact creatures, just the same, don't get help from it. So a terribly situational card. Conspiracy. 5 mana. As Conspiracy comes into play, choose a creature type. Creatures you control and creature cards in your graveyard, hand, and library are of the chosen type. So one of the best things you could do is name slivers. Since slivers give all slivers all abilities that they have, this would make every creature in your deck a sliver. You could also use this with rebels and mercenaries. Since it's black, most of the time mercenaries was probably the most heavily used back in the day. Meaning you could search your library for any creatures as long as the mana cost was relevant to the mercenary being used to fetch them out. Definitely a card with a lot of combo potential. Cornered Market. There are a lot of rares so far that we're going through. I've never seen this card. Enchantment. Players can't play spells or non-basic lands with the same name as a card in play. Don't step on the livelihood of other vendors, or they may step on you. Mercadian saying. Another situational card. Corrupt Official. 5 mana, 3/1. Look at the mullet on this guy. He can regenerate, which is weird. Whenever Corrupt Official becomes blocked, defending player discards a card at random from his or her hand. His favor comes at a high price. He just costs too much mana, and his regeneration cost is a lot. Most of the time, the opponent's probably just going to take the 3. They don't want to discard a card at random. Counterspell gets reprinted. Your attack has been rendered harmless. It is, however, quite pretty. Brazen Vizier. Cowardice. Rare enchantment. For 5, whenever a creature becomes a target of a spell or ability, return that creature to its owner's hand. Gerard was the Mercadian soldiers' greatest hero. They followed him blindly. When he left, they stumbled around blindly. This is good if your opponent uses a lot of creature enchantment strategies. But other than that, I've never seen the card used. Crackdown. Love this card. Non-white creatures with power 3 or greater don't untap during their controller's untap step. There is no place for mercy in defense of our lives. Spun the Choarim Executioner. Here we have the rebels have surrounded the remaining Mercadian soldiers, and they're about to be executed, or at least subdued. Green was the most popular color among my play group. This did come out in 1999 when I was actively playing Magic. I was a freshman in high school, and most of my friends were playing green, and they were using big, stompy creatures. Crackdown was a good way for me to keep those creatures from overpowering me, because once they attack, I would play Crackdown later, and then they wouldn't be able to untap their creatures as long as I had Crackdown on the battlefield. And it worked. Saved me a lot of games. Kragsaurion. Triple red, 4/4 lizard. When it is dealt damage, the controller of that damage's source gains control of it. It follows the strongest leader, the one with the longest whip. Aggressive, but outdated in today's standards, and the drawback is too risky to use it effectively. Crash. You may sacrifice a mountain instead of paying Crash's mana cost. Destroy target artifact. Gerard shook his head as the ground rushed to meet him. This, he thought, is not the start I was hoping for. This shows the Weatherlight crash landing on the plane of Mercadia. Credit voucher. 2 mana artifact. Pay 2, tap it, sacrifice it, shuffle any number of cards from your hand into your library, then draw that many cards. If you don't like your hand, you get a new one. Crenellated Wall. 4 mana, 0/4 wall. Tap it, target creature gets +4 toughness until end of turn. Mercadian soldiers excel at finding things to stand behind. Crooked Scales. For 4 mana, pay 4, tap it. Choose target creature you control and target creature an opponent controls. Flip a coin. If you win the flip, destroy the creature that the opponent controls. If you lose the flip, destroy the creature that you control unless you pay 3 colorless mana and then reflip the coin. I've never seen this card. I would love to have it for my coin flip deck. Crossbow Infantry. He's a little 1/1 soldier that has the tap, deal 1 damage to target attacker or blocking creature ability. The crossbow is the ideal weapon for the lazy Mercadians. Just point and shoot. Surprised he's not a rebel. Crumbling Sanctuary. For 5 mana. For each 1 damage that would be dealt to a player, that player removes the top card of his or her library from the game instead. So it turns all damage to mill, but it affects all players. In the artwork, it shows a goblin hiding from something, and the structure that he's hiding under or in is crumbling around him. So if he stays there for too long, he'll be buried under all the rubble. Custom Depot. Whenever you play a creature spell, you may pay 1 colorless. If you do, you draw a card and then discard a card from your hand. A bribe is always faster than filling out paperwork. That it is. Dark Ritual gets reprinted again. Eye of Twilight, give us sight. Take our offer, give us might. Make our power, Tears of Night. Out of the cycle from the original, there was Lightning Bolt, Dark Ritual, Ancestral Recall, Giant Growth, and Healing Salve. I think Dark Ritual got reprinted the most. Darting Merfolk. 2 mana, 1/1 Merfolk. Pay a blue, return it to its owner's hand. Might as well try to catch water with a net. Dawn Strider, one of my most favorite spell shapers and my favorite creature in the set so far. She has the Fog spell shaper ability, which means prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn just for paying a green and discarding a card from your hand. Morning's Mist can hide many things. So you could shut combat damage every turn as long as she survived and you had a card to discard from your hand. The artwork is beautiful. She's probably one of the best looking dryads that I've seen artwork of. Kudos to RK Post. Deadly Insect gets reprinted. 5 mana, 6/1. Can't be targeted spells or abilities. Definitely looks more deadly than the one from, I believe it was Alliances. With his newfound sense of self-importance, Squeeze set his sights on ever bigger bugs. Oh, I forgot about Deathgazer. I think he ate a merfolk. I think this looks like a merfolk's arms. When Deathgazer blocks or becomes blocked by a non-black creature, destroy that creature at end of combat. So he does have the Basilisk ability. Deepwood Drummer is the target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Shape or Spell Shaper. His drums echo Deepwood's heartbeat. Oh, sorry guys, I just had to double check. I'm not seeing your guys' chat here. Cosmic Seeds, hello. If you're still there, sorry. Soft Boyfriend Ediths, hello. Old World Micmac, hi. Sorry that I missed all your all's comments. But now that my chat is fixed, I see that y'all are here. Deepwood Elder. Pay X, double green, tap it, discard card from your hand. X target lands become forests until end of turn. They guarded the henge so long that they were as attuned to the power stones as they were to the trees. The henge was part of Ramos that Gerard needed, and they needed to get the pieces to power the Weatherlight. I don't know why you'd want X target lands to become forests until end of turn. Unless if your opponent isn't playing green, you could shut your opponent down that way. Deepwood Ghoul, 3 mana, 2/1 zombie. Pay 2 life to regenerate the Deepwood Ghoul. They feed on the living to stay undead. I've never really seen this zombie used, but you don't need any mana to regenerate them. You just had to pay 2 life. So I could see them being annoying, but I've never seen them used. Deepwood Legate, it's the black legate. If the opponent controls a forest and you have a swamp, you can pay him for free without paying its mana cost. And he has the Shade ability where he gets +1/+1 for each black you pay until end of turn. Pretty decent. Deepwood Tantive, 5 mana, 2/4 beast. When he becomes blocked, you gain 2 life. A single Tantive is just as dangerous as a herd. And it looks like this warrior is about to be trampled by him. But he doesn't have trample and he costs so much mana. Outdated. Deepwood Wolverine, 1/1 for 1 green. If Deepwood Wolverine becomes blocked, it gets +2 power until end of turn, meaning it'll be a 3/1. The Jovals are depleting its food sources, the Mercadians are eroding its home, and you're wondering why it's angry. Jovals were 6-legged giant cats, and we've seen a few on the artwork already, but they will get their own cards as well. Excuse me. pretty good for green standards back in the day. A 1/1 that becomes a 3/1 when it's blocked would most likely kill whatever was blocking it in the early stages of the game. Dehydration shows Sisay and Aurum. They need some water badly. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. You say Saprezo is a city built on water. I hope they have enough to wash the dust from my throat. Nowadays, a lot of the blue auras that tap creatures now keep them tapped. Other than that, dehydration is outdated. Oh, the Delrike. Or Delarite. Not really sure how to pronounce this card. But I do like it better than Dawnstrider. 7 mana, 6/6 trample horror. You may sacrifice 3 black creatures instead of paying Delarike's mana cost. It wears the souls of its victims like jewels on a chain. You can see there's 3 faces here on the Delarike. It reminds me of Hellraiser or Nightmare on Elm Street. This is just a vicious looking creature. It has really no head of its own. Like I said, the 3 faces here are kind of like attributing to the 3 black creatures you sacrifice. You could pay, just drop 3 muck rats. Turn 1, play 1 muck rat, 1/1 rat for 1 black. On your second turn, play 2 more. And then after the second turn, you can sacrifice all 3 of your muck rats. And then you have a 6/6 trample out on turn 2. Really good creature, even in today's standards. The artwork is phenomenal. The text, everything about it. I'm probably going to bet that the Delrike's my favorite card in this set. But we are still early on in. Desert Twister gets reprinted. 6 mana, destroy target permanent. Magical dust clouds Mercadian mages use to traverse the plane generate storms that devastate the surrounding terrain. But as long as the storms don't touch the mountain, the nobles simply do not care. Devout Witness. It is the disenchanting spell shaper. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. The Chorum fought Mercadia's decadence with more than just swords. And here, this one is destroying the scales, the crooked scales. Diplomatic Escort is the counter target spell or ability that targets a creature spell shaper. Diplomatic Immunity. Enchanted creature can't be the target of spells or abilities. And Diplomatic Immunity itself cannot be the target of spells or abilities. So once this got put on one of your creatures, the opponent was not able to target the enchantment either, meaning your creature would not be able to be further targeted by any spells or abilities. Disenchant gets reprinted. We have a Fat Magistrate. It looks like something of his just disappeared or broke. The Scepter of Power is fragile in a calloused hand. Chorum saying. Distorted Lens. Tap it, target permanent becomes a color of your choice until end of turn. Magistrate seems to prefer a distorted perspective of reality. Drake Hatchling, 3 mana, 1/3 Drake with flying. Pay a blue, it gets power +1 until end of turn. Play this ability only once each turn. This is like a reprint, but with a different name of the Azamite Drake from Mirage. There is beauty in the space between learning to fly and taking it for granted. Brother Jameson loves his drakes. Dust Bowl. Add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. Pay 3. Tap it. Sacrifice a land to destroy target non-basic land. To this day, this land is still really powerful because a lot of non-basic lands are just key in a lot of decks. And you lose a land yourself, but you get to destroy a non-basic land. So the opponent is going to feel the same. And there are ways to get your land back with Crucible of Worlds, Groundskeeper even. So you can just build your deck around it. And to this day, it's around a $20 card. Embargo. I've never seen this card. 4 mana. Non-land permanents do not untap during their controller's untap step. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 2 life. Oof. So you keep the non-land permanents tapped, but then you lose 2 life during your upkeep. I can't say that's worth it. It's a really dangerous stasis. It doesn't keep lands tapped, though. Energy Flux. For 3 mana, all artifacts gain at the beginning of your upkeep. Sacrifice this artifact unless you pay 2 mana. This is also reprinted. I think this is reprinted from Antiquities. Karn said nothing. He just grasped the Power Stone and squeezed tightly. The wild flashing ceased. Enslaved Horror. 4 mana, 4/4 horror. It looks like a mutated goblin. When Enslaved Horror comes into play, each other player may return a creature card from his or her graveyard to play. 4 mana, 4/4. Again, this is a terrible card because you get a 4 mana, 4/4. That's just basic in nowadays standards. And each other player gets to revive a creature from their graveyard, so you're not really getting anything worth out of it, in my opinion. Erithazon, 4 mana, 4/4 beast. When he attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature of the defending player's choice. Unlike Scorpions, Erithazon isn't immune to its own weaponry. It looks like a weird porcupine-looking thing. I don't know why he has locks on his belt with keys hanging off of him. But he grabbed the soldier, and the soldier's able to pull one of his quills out, and he's going to use it against this beast. 4 mana, 4/4. Like I said, that's basic in today's Magic standards, especially for green. So a lot of these cards have major drawbacks, and this adds to the Mercadian Masques set being weaker than its predecessing Urza block. Extortion for 5 mana. Look at target player's hand and choose up to 2 cards from it. That player discards those cards. The enforcers make no effort to distinguish gold from flesh. It is expensive, but you get to choose 2 cards. Normally, you only get to choose 1. Extravagant Spirit. Is it a bird spirit? No, just a spirit. 4 mana, 4/4 flying. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice the Extravagant Spirit unless you pay 1 colorless mana for each card in your hand. The fewer your possessions, the fewer your worries. That's true. If you have a fast deck that dumps your hand out really quick, then this card is really good. 4 mana, 4/4 flying is nothing to take lightly. If you can't afford to pay its upkeep, then it's not good. The Eye of Ramos. The blue artifact, you can tap it for a blue mana, and then you can sacrifice it to tap it for a blue mana. So in a pinch, you could get 2 mana out of it in 1 turn, but then you lose it after sacrificing it, obviously. Ramos wept, and then they were seized. False Demise. This was the card I was talking about that goes well with the Reticent Drake, and this is a reprint from Alliances. Whenever enchanted creature dies, return that creature to play under your control. Go down there and fish him out. Maybe his hide will fetch a prize. The artwork is awesome because it shows that this guy's looking at us like we're in on it. We know that he's faking his death. So if they're going to pull his body up, I think he's going to jump them. Maybe he's going to flip their boat, possibly murder them. There's a lot going on in this artwork. That's the POV shot, and that it recognizes it includes us in the action, so to speak. It's really good interaction with the player. Ferocity. Tongarth is fighting off these ghouls. Whenever an enchanted creature blocks or becomes blocked, you may put a +1/+1 counter on it. You lot go on ahead. I'll keep killing them until it sticks. Quote from Tongarth. Flailing Manticore. 4 mana, 3/3 with flying and first strike. Pay a colorless. It gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Any player may use this ability. It has a second ability where Compare colors. It gets -1/-1 until any turn. Any player may pay this ability. So if you play the Flailing Mana Core on turn 4, you have a 3/3 of flying on first strike. Your opponent goes, they get to play a land. They can pay 4 mana and give your, or 3 mana even to give your Mana Core -2/-3, and then it dies. So these flailing, and there are more flailing cards, I believe, and they're just absolutely horrible. I don't know why anyone would ever use them. Here's the Flailing Ogre. He's a 3 mana 3/3 for the same. I guess he hit this dog with these ham hocks. And then we have Flailing Soldier, a 2/2 for 1 red. And he did this. He just hit this rebel. So yeah, that's the flailing cycle of cards. Absolutely terrible cards. Flaming Sword. It has flash. Target creature gets, or enchanted creature gets +1 and first strike until end of turn. It's not Talrim Crystal, but I must admit it gets the job done. Targarth. Food Chain enchantment. Exile a creature you control from the game. Add X mana of any color to your mana pool, where X was the exiled creature's converted mana cost +1. You can only use this to play creature spells. I guess it's showing some leeches or maggots coming out from the ground. I guess somebody died here. Weird card. Forced March. For 3 black and X, destroy all creatures with converted mana costs X or less. The Catarans call it a screening process. The dead are in no condition to argue. Definitely really good if you have access to a lot of mana that many control decks do on a regular basis. Excuse me. Here's a forest. I believe this is in the Rushwood Forest. Here's another one. It's got a little stream going through it. I've never seen the artwork for this one from Mercadian Masques. And then this one looks a lot more old school. It's got a moss on these giant tree trunks. Foster. Whenever a creature you control is put into a graveyard, you may pay a colorless. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that card into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Fountain of Cho, when it comes into play, it comes into play tapped. You can tap it for a storage counter. You can tap it to remove any number of storage counters. Add 1 white mana to your mana pool for each storage counter removed in this way. It is a reprinted version of the white charge lands from Fallen Empires. Fountain Watch for 5 mana, 2/4 guardians, or they're human clerics now. Artifacts and enchantments you control cannot be the target of spells or abilities. The Cho Aram didn't rely only on a secret location to protect their fountain. Definitely good in artifact and enchantment strategies. Fresh Volunteers, 2 mana, 2/2 rebels. Every Cho Aram villager is a potential warrior. When they are called, they abandon their peaceful way of life and take up arms to defend it. Furious Assault. Whenever you play a creature spell, Furious Assault deals 1 damage to target player. Does it burn Surprising? Do you wish you had never raised arms against us? Kieran, Overseer. I use this with Man of War. I would return the Man of War in a Lurin, and the Man of War would keep returning itself to my hand, and then I would recast it for free, and it would just constantly deal 1 damage to my opponent every time. Game Preserve. Never seen this card. This creature is called a Wumpus. It's a weird-looking 4-legged beast. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player reveals the top card of his or her library. If all cards revealed this way are creature cards, put those cards into play under their owner's control. It's a weird card, but it helps everybody out. It is situational, though. I've never seen the card. It looks fun to use in a group game. General's Regalia. 3 mana artifact. Pay 3. The next time a sorcerer of choice would deal damage to you this turn, that damage is dealt to target creature you control instead. So it's like an artifact pariah. A uniform fit for a goblin. Gerard's Irregulars, 5 mana, 4/2, trample and haste. Had Gerard realized he'd end up fighting against them, he might not have trained them so well. So these were some of his soldiers that weren't actually clueless and harmless in battle. They actually did some work. Ghoul's Feast. Target creature gets power plus X until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Mercadian's not wealthy enough to buy a tomb or thrown into a bog called the Ghoul's Larder. Here we have the point of view where we're a dead body, and the ghouls have undug our grave and are ready to feast on our dead flesh. Giant Caterpillar gets reprinted from Mirage, a more up-close look of it. You sacrifice it to get a 1/1 butterfly with flying. But you only get it at the end of your turn. I guess if your caterpillars are about to die, that's the only good way to, at least you'll get something else out of it later. Glowing Anemone, 4 mana, 1/3. When it comes into play, you may return target land to its owner's hand. Beautiful to behold, terrible to beheld. It's good for holding your opponent back a turn for land-wise. If you have a way to constantly play Glowing Anemone, then you can lock your opponent out of playing lands for the rest of the game. Groundskeeper, as I mentioned before, pay 2, return a basic land card from your graveyard to your hand. Whereas the Rebels fight to defend the land, they work to renew it. This is awesome with Spell Shaper cards like Groundskeeper and Dawnstrider. You just have to discard a forest, you fog for the turn, and then you pay 2 mana, get the discarded land, and it goes back to your hand. And you can just keep doing the process over and over again. And this works for all your Spell Shapers. Gush. You may return 2 islands you control into its owner's hand instead of paying Gush's mana cost. Draw 2 cards. Don't trust your secrets to the sea. Really, really good card. Free card draw just by returning 2 islands to your hand. It is so good it was banned in Legacy and Pauper. Hammer Mage. It's the Spell Shaper to destroy all artifacts with converted mana cost X or less, and X is whatever you pay. When he's holding the hammer, everything looks like a nail. Haunted Crossroads, 3 mana enchantment, pay a black, return or put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. This will ensure that you keep drawing the same creature each turn. It seemed as if no one wanted them to reach the Henge of Ramos, not even the dead. The Heart of Ramos. Ramos bled and there was fire. It's the red artifact. Henge Guardian, 5 mana, 3/4 artifact creature. Oh, it's a dragon worm? I would have never guessed either of those. Pay 2 mana, he gains trample into end of turn. Like so many Thrawn relics, the worm engine kept operating long after its creators were gone. So Ramos used to be a creation of the Thrawn, which were essentially the first Phyrexians before they became corrupted with black magic thanks to Yawgmoth. The Henge of Ramos. You tap it for a colorless, or you can pay 2 mana, tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. It is the hub. We are the wheel. Dryad saying. Hickory Woodlot. It enters the battlefield with 2 depletion counters on it. And it comes into play tap. You can tap it to remove a depletion counter to add 2 green mana to your mana pool. If there are no depletion counters on the Hickory Woodlot, you must sacrifice it. So it was a 2-time use that tapped for 2 mana of the corresponding color. Each color got one in the set. High Market. Taps for a colorless, or you could tap it, sacrifice a creature to gain 1 life. If it can't be had here, it can't be had on any world. Not good anymore, in my opinion. There's another land out there. I forgot exactly what it's called, but you tap it, sacrifice a creature, you gain life equal to the creature's toughness instead of just 1 life. High Seas. Red and green creature spells cost an additional colorless to play. Bend as the wave breaks, or it will break you as well. I guess everyone was on this ship, and this magistrate and his pet cat got washed off while this merfolk looks at him like, Low skill issue, bro. Highway Robber, 2 mana or 4 mana 2/2 mercenary. When they enter the battlefield, you gain 2 life and target opponent loses 2 life. I had a combo with them where I would constantly sacrifice them and then bring them back to ensure that every turn I would gain 2 and my opponent would lose 2. Tonight, madam, it's your money and your life. Oh, she is. I guess he hit her too. She's got. Looks like she got struck. Hire Giant, 4 mana 4/4. When it comes into play, each other player may search their library for a land and put it into play, then shuffle your library. Again, not good. These 4 mana 4/4 where that helps all other players is just terrible. Honor the Fallen, 2 mana instant. Remove all creature cards in all graveyards from the game. You gain 1 life for each creature card removed this way. May the river claim Chalmano's body wherever it lies. Tarkons, the Cherubim Healer. Excuse me. I forgot how Chalmano dies. I thought he survived much later until the invasion block, but we'll have to research that. This card's good against graveyard revival strategies. If your opponent has ways of resurrecting creatures from their yard or bonuses that they get from the graveyard, his card would delete all the creatures in their graveyard, exile them, and then you get rewarded by 1 life for each one that you exile. Hoodwink. I forgot about this artwork. Returns our artifact, enchantment, or land to its owner's hand. I did not know this targeted land. I knew it did artifacts and enchantments, but I did not know it returned land. The use of Rashida's Marketplace are always ready for a quick foot race. Now, Mercadian has a card called Isochron Scepter. It's an artifact that costs 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you exile an instant from your hand that costs 2 mana or less. If you put Hoodwink on that scepter, every turn you could return your opponent's land to its owner's hand. Since your opponent can only play 1 land a turn, your opponent's going to be stuck on 2 or 3 land for the rest of the game, as long as you have the scepter and the mana to use it. So I did not know that Hoodwink returned land, even though I had the card and I've seen the card used before. I've never seen it used to return land. Horn Troll, 3 mana 2/2 with regeneration. If I say it's a troll, it's a troll. Goblins is always right in Mercadia. That's Squee going by what he's saying. Because goblins are considered royalty in Mercadia. Horn of Plenty, 6 mana. Whenever a player plays a spell, he or she may pay a colorless more. If that player does, he or she draws a card at the end of the turn. This horn is an exact replica of the fabled Horn of Ramos, except mine is more lavish. Mercadian Magistrate. It helps everybody, which is horrible. Here's the Horn of Ramos for green. Ramos touched and there was life. Howling Wolf, 4 mana 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for up to 3 Howling Wolf cards, reveal them, and put them in your hand. If you do, shuffle your library afterwards. Unfortunately, they cost 4 mana, which is a lot. Hunted Wumpus, 4 mana 6/6. When it comes into play, each other player may put a creature card from their hand into play under their control. Just one can feed a dozen people for a month. Here's the hunters. We've seen that he got struck with an arrow, and he's bellowing in pain. At least he's not a 4 mana 4/4. 4 mana 6/6. I could 50% justify that cost and the risk for your opponent playing their best creature on the battlefield, but it's still a risk I would not take. If I was going to play a 4 mana 6/6 with a drawback, I would play the Argothian Worm from Urza's Saga. Ignoble Soldier, 3 mana for a 3/1. When Ignoble Soldier becomes blocked, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt by it this turn. That's horrible. Cowardice is a term invented by those with no cunning. Let's switch. Indentured Djinn. I thought we were done with the Djinns. 3 mana, 4/4 flying. When Indentured Djinn comes into play, each other player may draw up to 3 cards. It's not always clear who's the master and who's the servant. Gosh, that's a horrible drawback. I don't know where the Djinn is flying away from, but I assume the summoner he has in his hand, and they're not happy wherever he's being taken to. Instigator, 2 mana, 1/1, Spell Shaper. For 3, and discard a card from your hand. Creatures target player controls attack this turn if able. The desecration of their dead makes even the Surpraisen careless. This is really good because if you're forcing all your opponent's creatures to attack, they're not going to have anything to block with unless they have played a creature on that turn if the creatures have summoning sickness. Also, if they have creatures that are mainly used for like tapping, like Mother of Runes or Archivist, this will either force them to attack or they have to tap it then and there, meaning on your turn, their defenses are going to be very limited. Insubordination for 2 black. Enchant creature. At the end of the turn of enchanted creature's controller, Insubordination deals 2 damage to that player unless the enchanted creature attacked this turn. Artwork shows a goblin trying to tell this, I assume it was a Phyrexian, what to do, but the Phyrexian grabbed the whip and said, hell no. Intimidation. Creatures you control cannot be blocked except by artifact and black creatures. For 5 mana, it's really good. If they move, kill them. In fact, kill one now to make sure the other understands. And here we have the Catarins busting through, and the soldiers are intimidated, and it looks like one's going to be killed. Invigorate. If you control a forest, you may have an opponent gain 3 life instead of paying Invigorate's mana cost. Target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. Here it shows a Dryad lifting a big Wumpus. Really good card. Again, having your opponent gain life is not really a threat at all. This card's banned in Pauper. Did not know that. I don't really play Pauper that much, though. Inviolability. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to enchanted creature. So this gives the Child Mano ability to any creature that you put this on. A Soldier's Faith is magic strong enough to protect against any blade. Iron Lance. For 2 mana, pay 3, tap it. Target creature gains first strike until end of turn. The only way to get the Mercadians to fight on the front lines is to give them really long weapons. I don't know. The artwork looks weird on this. I don't know what the deal with the Jovel is between these 2 guards trying to hold up the giant lance. Here's an island. Another island with some moss on it. This one has waves crashing against it. There's a little alcove here. And this one has more just rocks than actual land itself. But it looks pretty because it's from like a slanted aerial view. Ivory Mask. 4-mana enchantment. You yourself cannot be the target of spells or abilities. So red and black decks are especially not going to be able to harm you. Black's not going to be able to have you discard cards if it says target player or target opponent. And red's not going to be able to target you with their burn spells. I did not choose my role, Orem, said Chalmano patiently, and I suspect Gerard did not choose his. Jeweled Torque. For 2 mana, when it comes into play, choose a color. Whenever a player plays a spell of the chosen color, you may pay 2 colorless. If you do, gain 2 life. It's a okay life gaining artifact that was situational and based on what your opponent's playing. The Jovel Queen. 6 mana, 4/7 Rebel. Attacking does not cause the Jovel Queen to tap. And here is the big 6-legged cat herself, and probably the best rebel in the set. War-trained Jovels eat twice their weight in war-trained soldiers daily. Jovel Rider. 5 mana, 3/3 Rebel. With Trample. Don't be fooled by the rider's fluid grace. It takes years of practice to ride these beasts. Karn's Touch. For double blue, target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness equal to its converted mana cost until end of turn. I don't like that it's until end of turn. Chris Mage does 1 damage to target creature or player. It's a spell shaper. Her blade draws blood without ever touching its target. The Chiron Archive. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may remove the top card of your library from the game face down. Pay 5, discard your hand, sacrifice the archive, put all cards removed from the game with the Chiron Archive into its owner's hand. Hannah, I think this is Hannah fighting off one of the goblins for the archive. Chiron Glider, 2 mana, 1/1 flying. They cannot block. Mercadian's Chiron Goblins are the opposite of Dominarian Goblins. They're smart and cowardly. Chiron Legate, it's the red. He kind of looks like Piccolo. If the opponent controls the plains and you have a mountain, you can play this goblin without paying its mana cost, and he's a 1/1 with haste. Chiron Negotiations, 4 mana, tap and untap creature you control to deal 1 damage to target player. Chiron Goblins always speak in questions and never allow wrong answers. Looks like the goblins are going to use poison darts on these merchants because the negotiations went south. This is really good in decks where you have a lot of creature tokens or goblins or anything where you're swarming the battlefield. But your opponent has defenses that you don't want to lose your creatures in combat to. So this is a way you can tap your untapped creatures at any time to deal 1 damage to target player. Chiron Sniper. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may have Chiron Sniper deal 1 damage to target player. Chiron Goblins always act behind the scenes, even in battle. Chiron Toy. Pay 1, tap it, put a charge counter on it. Tap it, remove X charge counters, add X +1 colorless mana to your mana pool. It's a weird artifact mana maker, but it's outdated. Land Grant. If you have no lands in your hand, you may reveal this card from your hand instead of paying its mana cost. Search your library for a forest and put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library. Interesting card for back in the day. Larceny. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card from his or her hand. Here we have yet another card of some mercenaries robbing and pillaging people. Last Breath. Exile a target creature with power 2 or less from the game. Its controller gains 4 life. The river flows and my soul returns. This is Chalmano dying. Lava Runner, 3 mana for a 2/2 lizard with haste. If they become the target of a spell or ability, the spell or ability's controller must sacrifice a land. Definitely an interesting card for red. Leyline, for 4 mana enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That's terrible that it helps everybody. I can feel the strength of the entire forest, from Gerard. Liability, 3 mana enchantment. Whenever a card is put into a player's graveyard from play, that player loses a life. So this affects everybody. Gerard realized that the helpless woman they'd rescued from Wrath was nothing of the sort. So the artwork shows Takara pushing the blind Stark out into wherever. Gerard's like, oh my gosh, why'd you do that to your dad? And this is where Takara ends up revealing himself to be Vorath, where he slits Stark's throat. Lightning Hounds, 4 mana for a 3/2 first strike. I also wish they had haste. Quick enough to avoid Joval's when alone, and fierce enough to attack them in packs, the Hounds were as at home in the mountains as the Mercadians were atop theirs. The artwork is really good. Lithophage, 5 mana, 7/7. At the beginning of your upkeep, you must sacrifice a mountain unless you sacrifice the Lithophage itself. Or the other way around. You have to sacrifice the Lithophage unless you sacrifice a mountain. It's viciously territorial, destroying every creature on the mountain it has chosen to consume. I think it's a really good. If you have to sacrifice a mountain every turn, once you're at 5 mana for red for a 7/7, I mean, if it had trample, it would be broken in my opinion. But 5-mana 7/7, it's pretty good. If you're running red green and you have Groundskeeper, you just keep getting that mountain back into your hand and then playing it. Lumbering Satyr, 4-mana 5/4. All creatures gain Forest Walk. The Satyr carves the path that all of the Rushwood follows. Now the Satyrs I am used to are the goat half man people from ancient Greece mythology. So this looks nothing like it. And if you're playing green, all creatures gain Forest Walk, meaning your opponents are gaining creatures with Forest Walk too, so you're not going to be able to block anymore. So I don't think it's worth 5-mana for a 5/4. Or 4-mana 5/4. Lunge. Lunge deals 2 damage to our creature and 2 damage to target player. Choram's Righteousness was no match for Banalish combat training. Here, Gerard stabbed a weird-looking rebel. Lunge is pretty good. If you have 2 targets for the price of 1, that's always a benefit. Lure gets reprinted from Ice Age, and hell, even Alpha or Beta revised. All creatures able to block enchanted creature do so. Deepwood's reach is not so long, so it invites its enemies in. Here, a Dryad is offering you an apple. I forgot about this card. Maggot Therapy. You can play it as an instant. Enchanted creature gets +2/-2. If this is secure, I'd hate to see the disease. So this guy's got maggots for arms. You could put it on your opponent's creature if they have 2 toughness or less to kill them. Magistrate's Scepter. Pay 4 and tap it to put a charge counter on it. You can tap it and remove 3 charge counters on it to take another turn after this one. If you have a deck that uses Proliferate, you could essentially take infinite turns depending on how many cards with Proliferate you have out once the Scepter gets at least 1 counter. I have seen it done before. Magistrate's Veto. White and blue creatures cannot block. The Magistrate had been the Goblin's puppet for so long that he made the right decisions with little prompting. Yep, the Goblins were the advisors to the fat Magistrate. Megatherium, which is a prehistoric sloth. 3-mana 4/4 with trample. When it comes into play, you must sacrifice it unless you pay 1 colorless for each card in your hand. This really throws off its mana cost. If it's the only card in your hand, then 3-mana for 4/4 trample is great. But because of its drawback, it is heavily outdated. And the artwork isn't so good because this doesn't look like a sloth at all. I don't even know what face this thing is. So I think the artwork could have been better. Yeah, its face is just totally weird. Mercadian Atlas, 5-mana artifact. At the end of your turn, if you did not play a land, you may draw a card. Oh, I've never seen this card before. Interesting. One may as well chart the clouds as try to map Mercadia. Mercadian Bazaar. This is the red storage land. Mercadian Lift. Pay 1, tap it. Put a winch counter on it. That's definitely an interesting counter. Tap. Remove X winch counters from it. Put a creature with converted mana cost X from your hand into play. I never knew this card existed. That's interesting. Mercadia's Downfall. Here's the Weatherlight. Here's the hangar because the hangar was under the city of Mercadia. Because of this explosion, it sends a rift through half of Mercadia, which ends up falling to the ground. With an explosion that shook the foundation of the city, the Weatherlight burst from the underground hangar. Attacking creatures get power plus X until end of turn, where X is the number of non-basic lands defending player controls. This gives all your attacking creatures that bonus, and most of the time nowadays, your opponents are going to be playing a lot of non-basic lands. Midnight Ritual cost X and 3. Remove X target creature cards in your graveyard from the game. For each creature card removed in this way, put a 2/2 zombie token onto the battlefield. Bury old friends deeply, lest they return bearing worms. The artwork is a bit misleading because this shows ghosts instead of zombies. Misdirection. We have a mage, or 2 mages and a merfolk, and I guess this mage is switching their heads. You may remove a blue card in your hand from the game instead of paying the misdirection's mana cost. Target spell with a single target targets another target instead. Misshapen Fiend, 2 mana for a 1/1 flying mercenary. You'd scarcely believe they could fly until they drop out of the sky onto you. Misstep. Creatures target player controls do not untap on the next untap step. The feet have no eyes. Praise and sing. Here two merfolk made this noble trip. Molting Harpy. 1 black for a 2/1 mercenary. With flying, at the beginning of your upkeep, you must sacrifice the Harpy unless you pay 2 colorless mana. Shed Harpy feathers leave painful wounds, which explains the Harpy's mood. Moment of Silence. Target player skips his or her next combat phase this turn. It's kind of like a white fog. The silence commemorates not those who've died, but those about to. Monkey Cage. 5 mana artifact. When Monkey Cage comes into play, sacrifice it and put into play a number of... No, I'm reading this wrong. When a creature comes into play, sacrifice Monkey Cage and put into play a number of 2/2 green ape tokens equal to the creature's converted mana cost. So play Monkey Cage. Next turn, if you play Darksteel Colossus, which is an 11/11, you sacrifice to the cage and you get 11 2/2 green ape tokens. So the opponent could also play a creature for just 1 mana. Then you have to sacrifice the cage and you only get 1 2/2 ape. So it is a situational card. A lot of these cards from Mercadian Masques heavily situational. Moonlit Wake, 3 mana. Whenever a creature dies, gain 1 life. As long as Rushwood glows, no life is ever truly lost. Tarkarns, the Chorum Healer. Beautiful art. There's a Mercadian Mountain. Here's like a mountain valley. This is a more arid, sandy mountain. And this one is covered with snow with an alpine forest below it. Muzzle. Prevent all damage that would be dealt by enchanted creature. Clenched teeth do not bite. Chorum saying. Natural Affinity. 3 mana instant. All lands become 2/2 creatures until end of turn. They still count as lands. As long as the Dryads are part of the forest is part of the army. Here we see her hair are like tree limbs, and the way she's moving her hands, it shows like the trees here are moving in the shape. This tree limb is moving in the shape of her hands. The artwork is cool. I can just see the action going on here. There's a combo with this card in Eradicate. So if your opponent has swamps, play Natural Affinity, meaning all lands are now 2/2 creatures. If you use Eradicate, which was in Urza's Destiny, exile a target non-black creature from the game, search your player's hand, graveyard, and library for all cards of that name, and remove them from the game as well. So because the lands are now creatures, you can remove your opponent's swamp from the game, and then you search their library, hand, and graveyard for all copies of that swamp, and they no longer get any more lands for the rest of the game. One of my friends built a deck to use this. Nowadays, it might be too slow or a one-trick pony, as many combo decks tend to be. Nether Spirit, 3 mana, 2/2 at the beginning of your upkeep. If Nether Spirit is the only creature card in your graveyard, you may put it back onto the battlefield. It roams in the worlds of the living and the dead, but belongs to neither. Definitely really good if you don't have a lot of creatures in your deck. You could just keep resurrecting this guy. Nightwind Glider is the 2/1 flying rebel with protection from black. Here she is on a hang glider, flying through a flock of bats, undeterred. Once you learn to float on the shadows, you'll never fear them again. Noble Purpose is a good 5 mana enchantment that gives all your creatures lifelink. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage, you gain that much life. Fighting for the right reasons is itself a source of strength, and it's showing some Mercadian rebels fighting off showing rebels fighting off Mercadian soldiers. Notorious Assassin is a spell shaper that destroys target non-black creature. It cannot be regenerated. He wears his infamy like a fine silk shirt. Even though he is notorious, he also looks very noble. I assume he already fired off his Oh no, here's the arrow. The arrow's notched here. I was about to say I don't really see an arrow in this crossbow, but it is notched already right here, and he's about to fire. Ogre Taskmaster, 4 mana for a 4/3 who cannot block. He doesn't have to be smart. His masters only give him one command, and I assume that's attack. Orum's Cure. If you control the planes, you may tap it. Or if you control the planes, you may tap an untapped creature you control instead of paying Orum's Cure's mana cost. Prevent the next 4 damage that will be dealt to any target this turn. So the rebels didn't really have the healing power that Orum had. So most of the time when they had a wound, they just had to cut off their limb. Here, Orum's stopping the healer, so to speak, from, I guess, sawing off this guy's leg, and Orum will cure it so the guy can keep his leg. Overtaker. It's a spell shaper for untapped target creature and gain control of it until end of turn. That creature gains haste until end of turn. It's no challenge to master a Mercadian. Here, the spell shaper took control of this noble. Panacea. A drop numbs the tongue. A sip sends the heart racing. A drop reforges the body. Pay double X. Prevent the next X damage that we dealt to target creature or player this turn. Very mana heavy. Pangasaur, 4 mana for 6/6. Whenever a player plays a land, Pangasaur returns to its owner's hand. Only Rushwood is vast enough to swallow this creature whole. The drawback isn't so bad. It doesn't really help your opponent out at all, but expect Pangasaur to constantly return to your hand. Peat Bog is the black depletion counter land. Pious Warrior is a 2/3 rebel. Whenever he is dealt combat damage, you gain that much life. The Chorum make no distinction between healers and soldiers. Here's plains. We have a farmland and a little path through the tall grass. This plains is more covered in dark shadows and shade. Or no, I assume these are dark clouds and this is the sky. This is a more sunlit plains. Looks like a hot day out there. And here's the city of Mercadia from afar on the upside down mountain. Port Inspector, 2 mana 1/2 townsfolk. When he becomes blocked, you may look that defending player's hand. Snitch. There may be a few minor additional fees, levies, duties, surtaxes, tariffs, imposts, tolls, block, block, block. You can see that these merchants don't like the Port Inspector. Here's the power matrix, what was needed to restore the weather light to full power. Tap it, target creature gets +1/+1 and gains flying, first strike, and trample until end of turn. As he repaired the ship's planeswalking engine, Karn saw for the first time how he could catalyze the Weatherlight's evolution. Definitely versatile, gives your creature a lot of options. Pretender's Claim, for 2 mana, when enchanted creature becomes blocked, tap all lands defending player controls. The surest way to lose your holdings is to plead for them in Mercadia's city's courts. You can see these guards don't really believe this noble. Primeval Shambler, 5 mana 3/3 mercenary. Is he a Phyrexian? No, he's still a horror. And he has the Shade ability. His mind, like his body, is made up of the swamp's flotsam. Puffer Extract. Here we have a pufferfish, and they extracted his toxins. Pay X, tap it. Target creature you control gets +X/+X until end of turn. Then you must destroy it at the end of the turn. Puffer's flesh is the deadliest in the sea, and therefore the most useful. Since a pufferfish puffs itself up, this gives the creature its buff, but the toxin is poison, so your creature will die after its use. Excuse me. Pulverize. 6 mana, you may sacrifice 2 mountains instead of paying Pulverize's mana cost to destroy all artifacts. Really powerful card. I like it a lot. It's definitely could be used in a pinch. This weird looking elephant with 3 eyes and 4 tusks is about to stomp the hell out of this cart with trinkets. A lot of players use artifacts for mana ramping or combos, and Pulverize will destroy them all. Puppet's Verdict. Flip a coin. If you win the flip, destroy all creatures with power 2 or less. If you lose the flip, destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. What was heads again? The Mercadian Magistrate. Here you can see the Magistrate of Mercadia doesn't really have any real power. He is a puppet put in place to keep the masses, to deal with like frivolous market disputes and such. Here the Phyrexians are in the background and the Chiron goblins. The Phyrexians are like, the goblins are like the middleman between the Phyrexians and the magistrate. So the guy on the left being the Phyrexians are in true command here. Putrefaction. Here again is one of the Choarim rebels, and it looks like his arm is rotting. So the Choarim healer Tarkarns is about to saw it off. Whenever a player plays a white or green spell, that player must discard a card from their hand. Do you want to be alive or whole? Tarkarns the Choarim healer. Because he doesn't saw this off, this rot's going to continue to go to his body and it will eventually kill him. So it's not going to be pleasant. Quagmire Lamprey. 3 mana for a 1/1 fish. When Quagmire Lamprey becomes blocked by a creature, put a -1/-1 counter on that creature. Rain of Tears. Destroy target land. It's reprinted from Tempest. Mercadian elitism is reinforced daily by physical position. Their neighbors are literally beneath them and are treated accordingly. Ramosian Captain. 3 mana 2/2 Rebel with first strike. Pay 5. Search your library for Rebel with mana cost 4 or less and put it onto the battlefield. The Choarim believe in leading by example. Ramosian Commander. 2/4 Rebel. Pay 6. Tap it. Search for Rebel with mana cost 5 or less and put it onto the battlefield. Chalmano guides your spirit. I guide your sword. Ramosian Lieutenant. 2 mana 1/2. Pay 4. Tap it. Search your library for Rebel that costs 3 or less and put it onto the battlefield. Give me your hand and I will give you victory. Ramosian Rally. If you control planes, you may tap a creature you control instead of paying the mana cost. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Here we have a Rebel rallying the rebels. Ramosian Sergeant. 1/1. Pay 3. Tap it. Search your library for Rebel that costs 2 or less and put it onto the battlefield. Her commands are part rallying cry, part sermon, and wholly undeniable. Ramosian Sky Marshal has flying, and he's a 3/3, pay 7, search a library for Rebel that costs 6 or less and put it onto the battlefield. Choarim fell from the sky onto Mercadian City like a vengeful rain. Rampant Crawler is a mercenary for 1 black, and he cannot be blocked by walls. Is he a snake mercenary? Oh, he's a lizard mercenary. Oh yeah, he has legs, duh. I always thought he was a snake. I don't remember his limbs. Not even the magistrate in his lofty tower is out of their reach. The Caterin Overlord. Repelling Scouts. 1/4 Rebel. Pay 3. They gain protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Remote Farm is the white depletion counter land. Renounce. Sacrifice any number of permanents. You gain 2 life for each one that you've sacrificed in this way. Gerard offered no defense to Orum's condemnation. The mission was under his command, and he was responsible. This is where Orum chastises Gerard for commanding the troops to slaughter the rebels. Here she takes off her Orum headdress, her turban, and this is where she says, "I'm not part of your crew anymore. I am with the Choarim rebels." Revered Elder. She should be a rebel cleric, but I guess she's too old to fight. 3 mana 1/2 cleric. Pay 1. Prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to her this turn. The Choarim worship life and revere those who've experienced it longest. Reverent Mantra. For 4 mana, you may remove a white card in your hand from the game instead of paying its mana cost. All creatures gain protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. A lot of protection in the set. Revive. Return target green card from your graveyard to your hand, showing a Dryad. This tree got destroyed somehow, but she's reviving vines out of it, and I assume the tree will regrow in time. Gerard's heart ached, recalling the living wreath Mary laid for her dead kin. No such memorial was left for her in wrath. Remember, Gerard did have to leave her behind when she was mortally killed by Krovax. Righteous Aura. Pay a white, pay 2 life. The next time a source of your choice would do damage to you this turn, prevent that damage. I think this card's reprinted. There's a great difference between pain and injury. Ciao, mana. Righteous Indignation. 3 mana enchantment. Whenever a creature blocks a black or red creature, the blocking creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. You are the disease that plagues Mercadia. I am the healer's knife that will cut you out. Rashidan Airship. 3 mana for a 3/1 flying. It can only block creatures with flying. This thing is just stacked with battle gear. It's crazy how something they have so many sharp objects here, and if just one of these would puncture this blimp, then they would all just go down. The view is truly spectacular as long as you don't look at Rashida itself. Rashidan Brigand, 3/2 flying pirate. When it comes into play, each opponent sacrifices a permanent unless they pay 3 colorless mana. They can only block creatures with flying. Rashidan Cutpurse, another pirate. When they come into play, each opponent sacrifices a permanent unless they pay 1 colorless. The bigger the purse, the greater the fool. Rashidan saying. Rashidan Footpad, 4 mana 2/2. Rashidan Footpad. Comes into play. Each opponent sacrifices a permanent unless they pay 2 colorless mana. Best things in life are free. Money, for instance. Here, this guy just knocked this merfolk out, and he's going to steal the jewelry, I believe. Rashidan Pawn Shop for 2 mana. Pay 2. Shuffle target card in play you control into its honors library. Shuffle target card in play you control. Is it target permanent? Shuffle target non-token permanent you control into its owner's library. Yeah, what a weird card. Everything comes to the waterfront eventually, on the tide or on credit. What a weird card. I don't know why anyone would ever use this card. Rashidan Port. Pay 1, tap target land, or you can tap it for a colorless. Rashida is a gateway to free trade, but the key will cost you. This was the money card of the set, the most valuable card, because it would shut down one of your opponent's lands. To this day, the original is still $40. Robberfly, 3 mana 1/1 insect. When Robberfly becomes blocked, defending player discards their entire hand and draws that many cards. In the pursuit of the juicy fly, Squee stumbled on the hidden hanger. And that's how Squee found the hanger. He was chasing a fly. And then Squee was able to report to Gerard about what he found. And that's how they were able to find the Weatherlight after escaping from prison. Rock Badger, 5 mana 3/3 beast with Mountain Walk. The Kyran goblins created most of their inverted mountains tunnels simply by driving this beast before them. Rouse. For 2 mana, if you control a swamp, you may pay 2 life instead of paying Rouse's mana cost. Target creature gets power +2 until end of turn. Now, this almost looks like that Kyran Legate card. He's doing the same pose. I think that's what the artist does. Rushwood Dryad. 2 mana for a 2/1 with Forest Walk Dryad. Rushwood is a living jewel that reflects its dwellers' hearts. This Dryad looks like it's made out of autumn. More autumn-like features. Rushwood Elemental for 5 green, 4/4 trample. Beginning of your upkeep, you may put a +1/+1 counter on it. Now, this is a really good green creature. It has trample. It gets more dangerous each turn. And you can see the size and scale of it. Here's a person standing here. And this is how large the elemental is. This big tree giant. Rushwood Grove is the green depletion land. Rushwood Herbalist, 3 mana for a 2/2. He is the regenerating tart creature spell shaper. I love the facial expression on this girl. She smells whatever the herbalist made, and it woke her right up. When generals gather their armies, healers gather their herbs. Brushwood Legate. It's the green free creature to cast as long as you have a forest and your opponent controls an island. She's a 2/1 with no other abilities. That is weird. Because the black one has the shade ability. The white one has protection from black. The red one has haste. I forgot if we've seen the blue one or not. Oh, no, we have not seen the blue one yet. This one has no abilities whatsoever. That's horrible. Saber Ants. 4 mana, 2/3 insect. When Saber Ants is dealt damage, you may put that many 1/1 green insect tokens onto the battlefield. They stay on the battlefield only long enough to consume the losers. I made a deck with Saber Ants where it was red and green, and I would use my own burn spells on my Saber Ants to create as many 1/1 bugs as I could. In Planar Chaos, I believe there's a card called Shivan Meteor. You do for 5 mana, you do 13 damage to target creature. So I would target my Saber Ants, and I would have 13 1/1 bugs come out after blowing up my own ants. I would also have Furnace of Wrath comes out that says double all damage dealt to all from all sources to all sources. So that would mean the 13 would be 26 damage to the Saber Ants, so I would get 26 ant tokens, insect tokens. I love the artwork. The soldier's trying to fight them, but the ant just caught the sword with its mandibles and just chomped it off. And you could see the ants accumulating from the hill up above. Sacred Prey. I forgot about this card. 1/1 beast. I assume the horse. Okay, it is the horse. Because it could be misleading because we have a more focus on the Jovel cat here instead of the actual, and it said creature beast, but it's actually the horse because this is the prey and the Jovel's about to pounce on the horse. Anyway, when Sacred Prey becomes blocked, you gain 1 life. To see one is a good omen to the Choerim. Not so good of a card for a 1/1. Sailmonger. Beautiful artwork. 4 mana, 3/3. Pay 2, target creature gains flying until end of turn. Any player may use this ability. Clients who cheat the Sailmonger make an impact on the rest. Sand Squid, 4 mana, 2/2 with Island Walk. You may choose not to untap them during your untap step. Tap target creature. That creature does not untap as long as the Sand Squid remains tapped. Pretty good for locking down creatures. Sandstone Needle is the red depletion land. Surprazen Bailiff. I've never seen this card. 5 mana, 2/2 Merfolk. When Surprazen Bailiff comes into play, remove all artifacts and enchantments in all graveyards from the game. When it leaves play, return all artifacts and enchantment cards from all graveyards to their owner's hand. Oh, I don't like the card at all. Costs way too much. And it helps everybody out too. Surprazen Breaker. 5 mana, 3/3 beast. Should be a shark beast or a whale beast. His hair looks weird. I wish it didn't have hair. Anyway, it's a 3/3. You pay a blue, put the top card of your library into your graveyard. If that card was a land, the Surprazen Breaker is unblockable this turn. Don't like the card. Surprazen Cove is the blue storage counter land. Surprazen Air. 2 mana, 1/1. When Surprazen Air becomes blocked, you may draw 3 cards. Within the walls of the floating city, Surprazen Wealth is like Surprazen Water. Abundant, free-flowing, and accessible to all. I don't think your opponent's ever going to block it. They're going to just keep taking 1 damage a turn. In a Merfolk deck, though, where you have like Lord of Atlantis and other Merfolk lords, it's good. But if you don't have any ways of I'm losing my words. Pumping up your creatures, then I don't think the hair is worth using in your deck. Here's the last legate, the Surprazen Legate. At least this one is flying. If your opponent controls a mountain and you have an island, you can play it for free. Is it a Merfolk soldier? Yes, it is. And it has flying. Like I said, the green one just doesn't have any other abilities. Surprazen Outrigger. 4 mana, 5/5. When it attacks, it's a ship or blocks, put it on top of its owner's library at end of combat. Surprazens excel at both tactics, hit and run. It's weird that Merfolk need a ship, but regardless, 4 4 mana 5/5, and the ship can attack without an island as well, which is also interesting. 4 mana 5/5 though that it'll go on top of its owner's library and a combat. It's a decent blocker. It could stop your opponent from attacking. It's Brazen Raider, 3 mana 1/2 Merfolk. When it becomes blocked, return it to its owner's hand. Terrible. Some quick dagger work and then back to the sea. That's a Surprising way. Surprising Scurry is the blue depletion land. Scandalmonger. Looks like when I was a young warthog. 4 mana 3/3. Pay 2. Is Monger still a... Oh, Boromonger. Pay 2. Target player discards a card from his or her hand. Any player may play this ability, but only during their turn as they can play a sorcery. Silence costs extra. Breaking it costs extra still. Security Detail. 4 mana enchantment. Pay double white. Put a 1/1 white soldier token onto the battlefield. Play this ability only if you control no other creatures and only once each turn. This will ensure you always have a 1/1 creature out. Seismic Mage, the destroy target land spell shaper. The ground shakes when he walks. His customers shake if they're late with his fee. Again, another great spell shaper to have, especially with Groundskeeper. You're going to keep your opponent at only whatever lands they have out on the battlefield. You're able to just keep destroying a land every turn with these spell shaping mages. Sever Soul, 5 mana sorcery, destroy target non-black creature, cannot be regenerated. You gain life equal to its toughness. Here we had an old witch, and I guess she's restoring her youth after she killed something. With the proper tools, even the Great River can be damned. Tossbun, the Choerim Executioner. Shock Troops, 4 mana 2/2 soldier. At any time, you can sacrifice them to do 2 damage to any target. When goblins blow themselves up, it's called stupidity. When humans do it, it's called heroism. Shoving Match. 3 mana. Until end of turn, all creatures gain tap target creature. Rashid and Barkeeps know something the Mercadians have yet to learn. If you keep pushing, someone will eventually push back. Silent Assassin. Mercenary for double black. It's a 2/1. Pay 4. Destroy target blocking creature at end of combat. She feels no need to disturb her victim's slumber. Here she will be slicing this noble's throat. Definitely one of the better mercenaries. Silverglade Elemental. 5 mana 4/4. When Silverglade Elemental comes into play, you may search your library for a forest card and put that card into play. If you do, shuffle your library afterwards. Good ramp, and you get a 4/4 out of it. For 5 mana is not bad. Silverglade Pathfinder. Search your library for a basic land and put it into play tapped. Shuffle your library. Really good spell shaper. And the artwork reminds me of Anna Paquin a bit. Sizzle. For 3 mana, deal 3 damage to each opponent. Explosions rip through the ship overhead, and those unfortunate enough to be directly below scrambled to find cover. Here's the Chiron Goblins using the Phyrexian airships, and as they're being destroyed because of Gerard and his crew. Forgot about this dumb card. Skulking Fugitive. 3 mana for a 3/4 mercenary. When Skulking Fugitive becomes a target of a spell or ability, it must be sacrificed. In the Cateran Guild, being caught is a capital offense. Skull of Ramos is the black artifact of Ramos. Ramos fell, and then there was night. Snake Pit, 4 mana enchantment. Whenever opponent plays a blue or black spell, put a 1/1 green snake token onto the battlefield. The ground is smooth, the way will be rough, the Deepwood saying. Here, this zombie is just being overpowered with all these snakes. He doesn't look bothered, though. He's a zombie. It's not like he can be poisoned with them. Snorting Gar. 4 mana 3/3. If they become blocked, they get +2/+2 into end of turn, which would make them a 5/5. Not bad. There's little advantage to surprising the Gar. Snuff Out. For 4 mana. If you control a swamp, you may pay 4 life instead of paying its mana cost. Destroy target non-black creature. It cannot be regenerated. Squee watched his Chiron cousins fall with a mixture of sympathy and relief. Squee wasn't dumb enough to join his, kin in with joining the Phyrexians. He still was loyal to Gerard. He could have ran and joined them because he was considered a royalty now and they would have listened to him. But he remained loyal and faithful, and he did not uh, partake in this destruction, which essentially saved his life. Soothing Balm for 2 mana. Target player gains 5 life. Here we have Aurum healing another rebel. Aurum taught Ta Karnst and the other Chorum healers a far less invasive method of healing. Soothsaying. We have Sissay and Hannah finding out where the rest of the... I guess this is the city of Mercadia. For 1 blue, pay 5, shuffle your library. You can pay X, look at the top X cards of your library, and put them back in any order. So this could kind of dictate what card you'll draw as long as you have mana to use it for. The Vizier's Wisdom proved invaluable in untangling the Mercadian knot of lies. Soul Channeling. It's enchantment that you put on a creature. Pay 2 life, regenerate enchanted creature. We have this rebel, I guess, who got revived by this Phyrexian. Driven by masters more terrible than the Mercadians could imagine, the Dark Overseers would pay any price to keep their shipwrights working. This, the Chiron talking about their Phyrexian masters. Spectre's Wail. Target player discards a card at random from his or her hand. As he gritted his teeth to focus through the pain, Tarngarth glanced at Takara. She seemed completely unaffected. Now it's because that's because Takara was Volrath. Spider Silk Armor, probably one of the best green enchantments that green could have in a deck. Creatures you control get +1 toughness and can block as though they had flying. It hardly weighs anything, but it takes all day to remove. Green's the biggest color that's weak against flying, so Spider Silk Armor really takes care of that weakness. Spiritual Focus. Not sure what's going on this card. I think this is a Wumpus. Whenever a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard a card, you gain 2 life and you may draw a card. So this is good sideboard against discard decks. Spontaneous Generation. God, look at the size of those leeches or worms. Put a 1/1 green sapling token into play for each card in your hand. Saplings always thrive on the runes of others, and Mercadia runes more than most. Oh, those are some large saplings then. The card itself isn't so good. If you have like 7 cards in hand and you play this generation, you're getting 6 1/1s. Maybe for that. I don't know. It all depends. But I think there are a lot better ways to get saplings now. Squall. Do 2 damage to each creature with flying. The air that holds them aloft can just as easily put them down. Excuse me. Squallmonger, 4 mana, 3/3, pay 2. She deals 1 damage to each creature with flying and each player. Any player may play this ability. Squall, Gale, Hurricane. It's all a matter of size and price. Now, I don't know what creature type she is. She's definitely not human. But I had a deck with her where I would give her Spirit Link because all damage that she deals, I gain that much life. So this stops my opponent from using her ability because every time they do use her ability, I'm gaining at least 1 life. Because she's damaging me as well, but the damage she deals to me is negated by the life gain. Plus I gain an additional life from my opponent taking damage from her as well. Meanwhile, I can use her ability all day long and continually to deal damage to my opponent without me hurting from it. Squee, the Goblin Nabob. It's his first card, and here he is in his general regalia. He's a 1/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, if he's in your graveyard, you may put him back in your hand. General Tarngarth Roar. General Nuisance, maybe. You can see, because Squee was a cabin boy, and he kind of got like picked on a lot, and now this was like a form of revenge for him because he became a noble and he wasn't mistreated like Gerard and his crew was in the city of Mercadia. But like I said before, he remained loyal and he helped his friends out. And he's secretly immortal. We'll find that out later. Squeeze. For 4 mana, sorcery spells cost 3 more to cast. Any pirate would prefer Rashida's swift and cruel justice to Surpresa's patient punishment. Stamina. Enchanted creature gains vigilance, and you can sacrifice stamina to regenerate the enchanted creature. I guess these soldiers were hunting this beast, and the beast is still well enough, even though he's injured, to take him out. Statecraft. Enchantment prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by creatures you control. Well, I guess you're never attacking if you have this enchantment out. Inside these walls, peace. Outside, sharks. You choose the Surpresian Vizier. Steadfast Guard. 2 mana, 2/2 rebel with vigilance. The Mercadians were prepared for the guard, but the guard was even more prepared for the Mercadians. He's a big dude. Stinging Barrier. 4 mana for 0/4 wall. Pay a blue, tap it, deal 1 damage to any target. Stone Rain, reprinted many times. The return of Ramos was foretold by devastating natural disasters and unnatural storms. Story Circle. It's a custom circle of protection. Next time a sorcerer choice would do damage to you, prevent that damage. When it comes to play, you choose a color. Artwork shows each mask representing a different color. The only downside is it does cost double white, and you do need a white to prevent the damage, meaning that in a mono white deck, the story circles are better. The circles of protection were better in multicolor decks because you only needed a colorless to pay for the circles ability, as opposed to this using white. Story circle was really annoying, but if you were playing against it, but it was a godsend if you were using it. Black and red almost always could not beat the opponent if Story Circle hit the battlefield, because they were not able to outright destroy enchantments. Strong Arm Thug. 3 mana 1/1. When he comes into play, you may return a mercenary from your graveyard to your hand. No, I insist. Let me carry all of that heavy jewelry. Again, we have somebody getting mugged. Mercadia is not a great place to live. Subterranean Hangar is the black storage counter and where the Phyrexian ships are under the mountain. Sustenance shows Sisay's eating an apple, I think, or some fruit. Even though the place she looks at is freaking dead. Pay 1, sacrifice the land, target gets +1/+1 to end a turn. Not worth it at all. It should be +1/+1 counter. Like the Dryads, the forest itself willingly gives up some of its life for the sake of the future. Here's a Mercadian swamp. That tea-colored water. This one is more, I guess you can walk on a little bit more solid land, but there's still muck here, and it's foggy. It's another continuation of the foggy swamp. And this one is more clear, but there's some brush that you gotta wade through. Task Force. 1/3 Rebel that gets +3 toughness if they're the target of a spell or ability until end of turn. Tectonic Break. Each player sacrifices X lands. Only the foolish and the rich build their houses where the land is thin and the ocean is near. Well, this palace got swallowed by the sea. This is good if you have artifacts that tap for mana. That way you're not left crippled as your opponent is. Territorial Dispute. For 6 mana, players can't play lands at the beginning of your upkeep. Sacrifice the Territorial Dispute unless you sacrifice a land. Bit by bit, Mercadia City had forced the Cho'Aram from their ancestral lands. They would be pushed no further. This costs way too much to be able to be used, in my opinion. Thermal Glider, 3 mana for a 2/1 flying, protection from red. The Mercadians are too busy looking down on us to see us coming. And here they are on, looks like, I assume this is like a missile launcher or a bomb. Rebels, that's how they got into Mercadia City, through the air and by repelling. Thieves' Auction, 7 mana, set aside all permanents. You choose one of those cards and put it into play tapped under your control. Then your opponent chooses one and puts it into play tapped under his or her control. Repeat this process until all cards are chosen and set aside in this way. Local enchantments with no permanent to enchant remain removed from the game. I like that it's called Thieves Auction because it's pretty much just a free-for-all of thieves mugging the hell out of this guy. Thrashing Wumpus. It's a Wumpus with leeches on it. 5 mana, 3/3 beast. Pay a black, it deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. So it's like a creature with pestilence on it. Young Wumpuses are malevolent and vicious, but they grow out of it. Oh, excuse me. Thunderclap. You may sacrifice a mountain instead of paying its mana cost. Deal 3 damage to target creature. Thwart. You may return 3 islands you control to your hand instead of paying its mana cost. Counter target spell. A really powerful counter spell. Probably second to Force of Will because you could have all your lands tapped and your opponents will think, oh, he doesn't have any mana open. I can play my best spell and it won't be countered. Now's my chance. Wrong. You just thwarted their spell. Tidal Bore. Here's where the wave took the Weatherlight away. You may return an island you control to your hand instead of paying its mana cost. Tap or untap target creature. The dry riverbed became a raging torrent, and the Choerim claimed their prize. Tidal Kraken. 5, 6, 7, 8. 6, 6. He is unblockable. To merfolk, pirates are a nuisance. To the pirates, merfolk are a threat. To the Kraken, they're both appetizers. Release the Kraken! This artwork, he almost reminds me of Violator from Spawn. Tiger Claws. You can play it as an instant. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and trample. You just smack the crap out of this soldier. Choerim martial artists emulate the beasts of their home. Timid Drake, reprinted from Weatherlight. 3 mana for a 3/3 flying. Whenever another creature comes into play, you must return the Drake to your hand. It flees from anything that isn't shaped like a cloud. Now, the Timid Drake from Weatherlight looked more timid. This thing looks dangerous and fearsome. Tonic Peddler is the life gain. Target player gains 3 life. Spell Shaper. The price is written at the bottom of the cup. Tooth of Ramos. It's the white Ramos artifact. Ramos smiled, and then there was day. Tower of the Magistrate, which lies on the top of the upside-down mountain of Mercadian. Like the city, weakest at its foundation. You can pay 1, tap it, target creature gains protection from artifacts until end of turn. Toy Maker, 1/1, Spell Shaper. Pay 1, tap it, discard a card from your hand. Target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature and power type is equal to its converted mana cost until end of turn. So it's like Karn, a Karn Spell Shaper. Artwork looks cute. Looks like a futuristic robot. The Chiron Goblins think it's cute. I don't think they know what's about to happen because he's going to animate this statue and it might target these goblins. Trade routes. 2 mana enchantment. Pay 1, return target land you control to its owner's hand. Pay 1, discard a land from your hand to draw a card. Like the price of goods, the value of the routes was renegotiated daily. This is good for late game if you have nothing but land and if you want to draw some cards. It's a nice way to put use to the land that you no longer need. Tranquility, destroy all enchantments. Reprinted, I believe, from Mirage. Sicily had been restored to her place on the ship. The legacy had been recovered, and the Weatherlight was sailing home to Dominaria. Gerard focused on the debts he had settled and on those he'd soon collect. So they made it back into Dominaria. Here they are coming from the portal. Trap Runner. 4 mana, 2/3 soldier. Tap it, target attacking unblocked creature becomes blocked. How could I catch her when the trees conspired to How could I catch her when the trees conspired to stop me? And I guess this soldier was chasing her, and he just clotheslined himself with the tree branch. Tremor, 1 damage to each creature without flying. Shows Gerard and Sisse running out of a cave-in. Without a word, Gerard and Sisse ran deeper into the mountain. Neither of them intended to leave Mercadia without the Weatherlight and its crew. Two-headed dragon, 6 mana for a 4/4 flying. Pay a red and a colorless. He gets power +2 into end of turn. He cannot be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, and they can block an additional creature. Kind of like two-headed giant, but two-headed dragon. That's really cool. Undertaker. WWE. Just kidding. It's the spell shaper that returns a creature from your graveyard to your hand. The weight of death is heavy, but it is not immovable. I had a combo deck with Undertaker. There was a card called Nevermaker, which was a 2/3 illusion that when it enters the battlefield, put a creature on top of target player's library. And you could pay an alternate cost, and if you pay the alternate cost, the evoke cost, it would you have to sacrifice it when it entered the battlefield. So I would play and sacrifice the Nevermaker, putting a creature on top of my opponent's deck. Then I would use Undertaker, discard a card from my hand to return the Nevermaker back from my graveyard to my hand, and the next turn I would keep doing that. So if my opponent kept playing creatures, they're going to draw the same creature every turn. If they stop playing creatures, they have nothing to block with. So they had to choose the lesser of two evils with that. Unmask. This is showing Takara being, what's the word? Revealed as Volrath, because here's Volrath here. You may remove a black card in your hand from the game instead of paying unmasked mana cost. Look at target player's hand and choose a non-land card. That player discards that card. Now, before I knew more of the story, because I have all the books and everything like that, there was no flavor text on this card. So when I first saw Unmask, I had no idea this was Volrath. I had no idea what all this meant because I had no flavor text to compare it to. But after reading the books, which I had done back then, and then re-looking at the cards, I'm like, oh yeah, this happened then, this happened then. So that's another reason why I enjoy the game so much. And I miss the books dearly. Unnatural Hunger, 5 mana enchant creature. At the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted creature's controller, Unnatural Hunger deals to that player damage equal to the enchanted creature's power unless they sacrifice another creature they control. The artwork is pretty cool because Unnatural Hunger, this human being just bit this. I assume this shield is made of wood, and he just chomped it, and his teeth are fine. So the soldier is gonna be should get the hell out of there because this guy's a badass. Uphill Battle. This is a really good red card. Creatures your opponents play come into play tapped. So if they have creatures with haste, their haste is wasted. Shamano knew he had no choice but to ally with Gerard. If that's what it took to free his people, he'd pay the price. Vendetta. Here's Takara killing Stark. Destroy target non-black creature. It cannot be regenerated. You lose life equal to that creature's toughness for just 1 black. Stark knew the voice was Takara's, but the venom was Volrath's. Venomous Breath. At end of combat, destroy all creatures that blocked or were blocked by target creature this turn. The Dryads need neither size nor strength to defeat their enemies in battle. That is a scary mask for them to be had. Venomous Dragonfly. 4 mana 1/1 flying. When they blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, destroy that creature at end of combat. A pretty little death is still death. Hey, Janshevik, how it becomes blocked. Hey, Double Jack 777, thank you for the comment. The creature becomes blocked by I know for the dragonfly, it's hard for it to become blocked because a lot of things with flying don't block it. If that's what you're talking about. Hey, Keith Wakefield, welcome in. Yeah, the artwork for Magic is so good. The soldier creature. Oh, Trap Runner. So the Trap Runner card, I'll scroll back up to it. Target attacking unblocked creature becomes blocked. So it just says the creature becomes blocked. So that means it's just not going to deal any damage to the or to you. This ability works on unblockable creatures, which is weird. I've had the card. I've used Trap Runner before, but I never knew it worked on unblockable creatures, even though it says so on the card. It just becomes blocked. Like there's no creature that does damage to it. The creature that's blocking it does no damage to it. If it has trample though, I need to look at the rules for that. That is interesting. If a creature with trample becomes blocked, if there's no creature actually blocking it, does the trample damage go all the way to the opponent? Yeah, so there's no actual blocking creature. It just means that the creature becomes blocked. So I think it's a way to counter creatures that are unblockable, like the Tidal Kraken, who is in the set. Next card is Vernal Equinox for 4 mana. Any player may play creature and enchantment spells at any time that they can play an instant. So it helps all players too. Oh yeah, it does help with Menace. Good call, Keith. Good call. Vine Dryad, 4 mana for a 1/3 with Forest Walk. You could play it at any time. You could play an instant, so it has flash. You may remove a green card in your hand from the game instead of paying its mana cost. So it was a free creature to cast if you had a green card that you could throw away. It was only a 1/3, so don't expect it to do much on its own. Vine Trellis. This was one of my favorite walls back in the day. 2 mana, 0 for a wall. Tap it to add 1 green mana to your mana pool. We protect our own with our own. Most of the time, your mana making, your quote mana dorks, would be like 1/1s or 1/2s. Vine Trellis was hard to kill, and most of the time, your opponent probably wouldn't want to destroy it because it was a wall. It would never be able to attack. So it was pretty good toughness for a mana making wall. And the artwork is cool because it just shows one of those dryads behind the wall of vines. Volcanic Wind, 6 mana sorcery for red, deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures where X is the number of creatures in play. Chorum call it the Fury of Ramos. This card is situational based on how many creatures are on the battlefield. Wall of Distortion, 4 mana for a 1/3 wall. Pay 3, tap it. Target player discards a card from their hand. Play this ability only you can play a sorcery. It reflects only nightmares. I guess she is there to scrub the wall. She has a brush and a magnifying glass and a sword. I don't know if she's there to read the wall or what, but I guess she sees herself as a horrific monstrosity. Definitely a weird card, but a lot of discard options are available, even though it's very expensive. Its toughness is really lacking, too, for the 4 mana. All right, we are on our last page. War Cadence, 3 mana enchantment. Pay X in a red. Creatures can't block this turn unless their controller pays X for each blocking creature. The rhythm isn't a call to arms, but a signal that the goblins have made a new enemy. Warmonger deals 1 damage to each creature without flying and each player. Any player may play this ability. Funny how money and war travel so well together. And he is a Minotaur now, is he not? Yep, Minotaur Monger. So the problem with this Monger is since he does 1 damage to each creature without flying and each player, he's eventually going to kill himself. with the damage, or your opponent can get him killed by paying the 2 mana each turn. That's why I like the Squallmonger better, because she did 1 damage to each player and each creature with flying, and since she did not have flying herself, she was immune from taking any damage whatsoever. Unlike this cow here who could get himself killed. Warpath for 4 mana instant. It deals 3 damage to each blocking creature and each blocked creature. Chalmano has never seen Mercadia City's forces fight so well. The magistrate must have hired a new hero. And that new hero was Gerard. War tax. Pay X in blue. Creatures cannot attack this turn unless their controller pays X for each attacking creature. The worst thing about being a depraved pirate is having to work with a bunch of depraved pirates. So I guess he was going to steal some gold for himself, but his crewmates caught him, and he's going to pay the price. This card is really good against creature strategies if you have the mana to use. If the opponent swarms you with 100 Saproling tokens, and you pay like 3, they're going to have to pay 300 mana to be able to attack you with each one of those. So War Tax is like, because Propaganda was 3 mana, and they had to pay 2 for each creature to attack you. So War Tax is a more, if you have the mana to use, it's a better version of Propaganda. Waterfront Bouncer is the return target creature to its owner's hand spell shaper. This guy looks like a blue version of the Hulk. Closing time comes earlier to some than to others. This guy's being squeezed so tightly you can see the blood vessels in his eyeball. He's a merfolk as well, so that does make a difference because merfolk decks are a threat to be had. Wave of Reckoning. I've never seen this card. 5 mana. Each creature deals to itself damage equal to its power. Inner Conflict can defeat a soldier more quickly than any armor. Man, I would not want to use this card because Wrath of God is way better than this. If you want to destroy every creature on the battlefield, just play cards that destroy all creatures on the battlefield. This one is way too situational, especially if the creature's toughness is higher than its power. You love Waterfront Bouncer back in the Madness deck. Yes, I do remember the Madness deck with also Wild Mongrel, the blue-green deck. I do remember that very well. Waterfront Bouncer is actually one of my favorite spell shapers for blue. It saved me many games. The spell shapers were powerful. Wild Joval. 4 mana, 3/3. Is it a cat or a cat beast? Just a cat. A 6-legged cat. Jovals sharpen their claws on trees or on Mercadians if no trees are handy. The artwork is really good, but 4 mana, 3/3 cat with no other abilities. Too basic for my taste. Wishmonger. He's a unicorn monger. 4 mana, 3/3. Pay 2. Target creature gains protection from the color of your choice. Until end of turn, any player may use this ability. It's not what you ask for, but how you ask for it. This could get out of hand. Like I said, the only monger I like is the green one, and only because I built my deck around it. Word of Blasting. Destroy target wall. It cannot be regenerated. Word of Blasting deals damage equal to that wall's converted mana cost to its wall's controller. Definitely a lot of wall hate. Worry Beads for 3 mana. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts the top card of their library into his or her graveyard. So it's a slow motion way of milling, but it also, you end up milling yourself. How worrisome. All right, that concludes our Mercadian Masques stream. Let me go back to my favorite card. Oops, what did I do? Get out of there. Did not want to copy all that stuff. So, like I predicted, once we saw the Delreich, I knew the Delreich was going to be my favorite card of the set. Should be this next page here. Delreich, I summon thee. Once we get past the deep woods, there he is. Definitely the best, my favorite card in the whole entire set. Dawn Strider is a close second. Two-Headed Dragon's a close second. And there was one other card, but because I can't remember it, I can't really say. It was early, too. It was before the Delrike. But I don't really remember, so I can't say. Or unless I'm thinking of Dawn Strider. Yeah, I think I'm thinking of Dawn Strider. But anyway, Delrike, such a powerful card. Was powerful back in the day and still powerful today. So again, this concludes the Mercadian Masques stream. Next week, we will be moving on to, I believe it's Nemesis. Yeah, Nemesis is next. We find out what happens to Volrath. We find out how Gerard and his crew returning to Dominaria, how the Phyrexian invasion will move on, as well as look at all the cards from those corresponding sets. So what were your favorites cards from the set? What combos were you playing when Mercadian Masques was active? Let me know in the comment section below. It was great to see some new faces in the channel. I apologize to the ones who were here for the first couple of minutes from the stream that I wasn't able to see the chat for. But again, I do this once a week for Magic content. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Have a good weekend.